CP3 remains. Keldon Johnson, the good man that he is, gives Chris Paul his number, and Keldon Johnson chooses one of his own. Jeremy Sochan been putting in a lot of work over the offseason. The Spurs recognize that, and they want to work and add to what he has been doing. We break that all down here on Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. And right now, we're on the road to 1K before the season begins. Hit that subscribe button. Take a spur of the moment to get every Spurs moment. Be one of the first 1,000 on this channel, because we're going to be here for a long time. But without further ado, Keldon Johnson switches to give Chris Paul his number C3. CP3 remains. And as you saw a little bit there, Keldon Johnson posted on his Instagram, and he is going to be number 0. Looks clean, by the way. I like Keldon Johnson, that number 0. And big things are to come with that. Let me explain. Before, there were rumors. I actually talked about this a few weeks back. There were rumors Keldon Johnson was not going to give up his favorite number, and he was going to be keeping it, but wearing it for a different team, because there has been so much talk from Spurs Nation about Keldon Johnson being moved. There's been talks about everything. People have been very upset with Keldon Johnson. We're going to talk about that a little bit more here momentarily. But sources close to the situation told the reporters that Gregg Popovich nudged Keldon Johnson to let Chris Paul have the number, because it was the right thing to do for a veteran player who is entering his 20th season. As a result, Paul will wear the same number he has worn 6 previous franchises. By all accounts, everyone has moved on, and we're eager to start the season. Of course we are. We are ready to get the Spurs season underway. The Olympics were right there. We got to see Wemby, but we didn't get to see Devin Vassell. We didn't get to see all the other great Spurs that we'd love to. Jeremy Sochan played, but he didn't really play all that much. We didn't see many of our guys center stage like we're going to see moving forward. Keldon Johnson, 6th year in the San Antonio Spurs, going to be wearing number 3. He was in admiration, as I said, for Chris Paul. You know what? If that's your idol, if that's the guy that you admire, it is right to give him that number. I understand that you think that you own it and you deserve it too, but Chris Paul, one of the greatest point guards of our generation, a guy who you idolize, you should definitely do that for an idol. I respect Keldon Johnson for doing so. Chris Paul, as I spoke on before too, I'm loving what he's been doing. He's been totally engaged with the Spurs this offseason. He's showing that he wants to be more than just a participant. He wants to be a contributor. Chris Paul has already been working out with some of his fellow teammates, and Keldon Johnson has lost over 33 pounds. Over 33 pounds? What? I mean, I've seen the pictures. I talked about the transformation, but 33 is insane. Where was he at? What did he get to? He said he is jumping and running more explosively than ever. And then Victor Wembanyama has returned for brief, much-needed vacation, 2-day practice, and everybody is ready to go. It's starting to get that season time. I know the NFL season's starting tonight, but NBA is getting right around the corner. You know, when football starts, you know basketball's right around the corner. So I couldn't be more excited for that. And speaking of Keldon Johnson, let's get a little closer look at this man. This is the new Keldon Johnson. He looks in shape. He looks lean. He has been doing a lot of water work, a lot of explosive work. He has been trying to add to that lateral quickness, trying to add to that explosion to get downhill at the basket, because those are things that he was lamented for all of last season. We forget what he had done the previous seasons, but we'll get into that. The number 0 for Keldon Johnson, in which he chose, could interpret as 0 expectations many fans have had for him. Keldon Johnson, it's not about proving others wrong, it's about proving himself right. And that is the case. We have to remember, he was the 29th pick in the draft. The 29th pick in the draft. You don't pick someone at 29 expecting them to be a superstar. You don't expect them to be a star. When you get one, you're elated, but you don't expect him to that. He's not top 10. He was not a lottery pick. Comes in. Okay, so he's going to average close-ish to 10 points a game, and then he's going to go overseas with Popovich in one of the USA years, in between obviously the real Olympic years. He's going to play well there. He's going to continue to evolve, continue to improve until you get to 22 points a game 2 years back. But Keldon Johnson here, when you put up close to 16 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, 2.8 assists, people are like, okay, you have a dip in points. Well, of course you're going to have a dip in points. When you are no longer that guy, he was the featured option on the Spurs. It was him and Devin Vassell. When you've got a guy coming in who is a generational talent, who is an alien, you're going to have to defer to that, especially when your game is predicated of, obviously you can play outside in, but you like to get to the basket. But you weren't going with the same explosion, especially because defenders were gearing more towards the basket with the fact that Wemby is 7'4". And then Devin Vassell was able to take his shooting prowess and take his game to the next level, so he got rendered to a bench role because defensively he wasn't as engaged, and that was something coming out of college that could happen. Mental lapses there. And offensively, he wasn't able to put up the same production due to the fact that he had other people there and he wasn't able to adjust then. But he's had an offseason to adjust. Clearly, we know some of the mental lapses that he has. We'll see if that can be rectified. But at least he understands something needs to be rectified because he's putting in the work. He is losing weight. He is trying to get his body in the peak physical condition so he can provide the best efforts that he can for the San Antonio Spurs in this coming season. And that is what I believe he will do. But moving on from Keldon Johnson into Jeremy Sochan. The San Antonio Spurs build on Jeremy Sochan's summer work. It's only 2 games in the Polish national team. We'll break it down here in just a moment. But he showed flashes of what he can bring for the San Antonio Spurs this season. Okay, the Spurs have made it clear that Sochan is a part of their long-term look. They have made it clear with the way they have treated him. They tried him out at point guard. Failed. But we knew when they were trying him out at point guard, they did not have many expectations for the season. It was, okay, let's ease Wemby into the NBA. Let's not put too much on his plate too early. Let's see if his body of a slimmer figure can adapt to the physicality of the NBA. All of those boxes checked off. And then we're going to have experiments with the rest of the young talent on this team. Jeremy Sochan, let's try to put him at point guard. See if we have a 6'8" kind of style point guard. Didn't work out. Okay, Devin Vassell, we're going to get him to adjust. We're going to get him to evolve. That was a check. Keldon Johnson, how can you merge yourself in with these other two? That didn't go well. But you know what? You've got a great orchestrator now in Chris Paul. You've got a veteran in Harrison Barnes who has worked as a 2 or 3 option on the early Kings roster. He has worked as a 5 option or 4 or 5 option on the Warriors when he was at the championship. You had Clay, you had Iggy, you had obviously Steph, and then Harrison Barnes would get his points when he needed to get his points. Sean Livingston, even when he came off the bench, was starting to give you offensive potency, and Barnes had to work there. Keldon Johnson can learn from these guys. Plus, he's had an offseason to adjust himself. But this is Jeremy Sochan. Okay, in the 2 games he played for the Red and Whites, he clearly the best player on the roster, averaging 18, 9 boards, 3 assists, and 2.5 stocks. He shot 57.9% from inside the arc, only attempted 2 threes, and that's okay. That is okay. I understand that last year his shooting from the outside was one of the issues for him, but here's the thing about Jeremy Sochan. 11.6 points per game, 6.4 rebounds, 3.4 assists. He's going to be getting more open threes this year because Chris Paul can create for him. Obviously, you've got Wemby in another season. You've got Harrison Barnes there. But 3-point shooting is not exactly what he's going to need. And it's not exactly what he's going to be. So I've compared him to this player right here, and I think there's a lot of comparisons of what he can be, and that is Aaron Gordon. You see they're the same height at 6'8". Aaron Gordon, last year, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. It looks pretty similar, a little bit more points, rebounds, and assists across the board, but pretty similar to what Jeremy Sochan did. 55% from the floor, 29% from 3. What we would hope for is for Jeremy Sochan to shoot a little bit better from the 3-point line, maybe around 32 to 33%. We can't be unrealistic with this. But I use Aaron Gordon because you have Chris Paul. You've got a true point guard. You got a true point guard there. You've got Devin Vassell. You've got a scoring wing. You've got Harrison Barnes. You've got a guy who can score if need be, but he's a shooter. You've got Wemby, who is the ultimate orchestrator. He obviously can score. He can dribble outside, so he can shoot from 25, 26. But obviously he is tall. He is big. He can get to the basket. He can shoot the mid-range. He can do whatever he wants to offensively. And then you've got Jeremy Sochan. Clearly not a great shooter, but he is an athlete. He can play great defensively. He can play great in a dunker spot. Wemby is a good playmaker. And I use Aaron Gordon because if you think about their roster last year, obviously they don't have Caldwell Pope now, but last year, you've got Jamal Murray. You've got your point guard. You've got the guy who's going to be running the show. You've got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You've got a shooter. You've got Michael Porter Jr. You've got a shooter, but a guy who can get their shot off the bounce if need be. And then you've got Jokic controlling the entire paint, putting himself at the nail, at the top of the key. He can do whatever he wants to. He's the best offensive player in the league. And then you've got Aaron Gordon in the dunker spot. He's 6'8". Obviously, Aaron Gordon has a little bit more lift, but he's 6'8". He's smart. And if Sochan can just play in that smart position and play in that dunker spot and then defensively take the best wing, as Aaron Gordon had been doing, and you saw them win a championship because of the efforts of Aaron Gordon. You saw him last year put up games where he did have 26 in a playoff game, but he didn't need to. The ball didn't need to be in his hands, but he can make plays and he can play solid basketball. That is what Jeremy Sochan should do for this roster. The Nuggets mold is something that the Spurs have. They have the unicorns that they've got at the 5 position. They've got good outside guards, one who can score, other ones who can shoot, and then you've got that guy there who's an athletic defender. That is exactly what he needs to be. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about Jeremy Sochan's impact. Do you think that he can fit that Aaron Gordon role? Let me know how happy you guys are that CP3 remains CP3, and if you think Keldon Johnson really can take that next step as he's been trying to do all offseason preparing himself. Let me know what you guys think. This was Spurs Digest with Keenan Warner, and I'll see all of you guys very soon.